Now, what this father wound does is it shapes her self worth first. Daughter learns her value through that father's approval, that whether he's giving that approval or not. If she has really heard in her life, I'm proud of you, she feels a lot unworthy. And you see that how parenting is that a lot of parents consider their daughter as burdens because eventually they would be married off to some else home. So, not an equal treatment is given, unfortunately, till this. Yo guys, namaskaram. So in this video, I wanted to talk in a little bit depth as to what daddy issues is because this term is popularized a lot without understanding the cultural and psychological context of it and how we can see patterns or like for a woman why does it stem up. So based on certain observations, certain research, I'll try to present a coherent view so that you can just understand patterns if you're dating or if you've unfortunately married certain people. This video would talk on the wounds that a young daughter who grows up to be a woman receives in her childhood. So just to give a disclaimer, I know most women would treat it as an insult, but it's not an insult. If you Google it, it's a real psychological condition which is also known as a father's wound. When a girl does not receive that emotional safety, the affection that she expects from her father, a certain sort of validation, because all of us want validation of our parents when we are young or when we are children, or that trust, it shapes her entire emotional operating system of sorts as an adult because she goes back to those childhood experiences subconsciously as a reference point. Though we can talk a lot, like as we grow up, that no, we have grown past those things. Now, consciously, those events don't come up, but humans are very complex. The conscious brain is just 2 to 3%, the rest is unconscious, like 95%. So, it's not about blaming women, it's just about understanding the psychology, the development, and how certain identities are formed when we grow up, and the lifelong impact of father wounds, because then women make choices which are not very detrimental to their potential as a person. So what exactly is a father wound? To put it in a very layman term, it is an emotional gap between the daughter and her father. Not physical absence, emotional absence. A father can be physically present, but if he does not know how to emotionally convey his needs or develop a healthy bond between himself and his children, it creates lifelong issues. The father was always there physically but not present. She never ever got that warmth, affection, genuine listening, a sort of protection that a girl expects that their father should do, or genuine attention. This creates a subconscious belief that men are always unavailable emotionally. And the reason is quite nuanced and complex because in India, men are unable to express their emotions healthily, even if it's needed for proper development. We are just unable to do that. This belief then follows in every adult relationship that she goes on to form. From the development theory point of view, the most critical age of an adult, or let's say a child or a person, is between 0 to 12 or 0 to, you can say, 13, 14, when he or she is just learning about things in life in general. That's like a critical window. A child learns love through the father's emotional behavior, the type of environment there is in home. From a neuroscience perspective, the brain wires certain attachment patterns before puberty. So, there's a very good neuroscientist on YouTube by the name of Andrew Huberman. You can check out his podcasts too if you're very much interested in it. But this is just like a very layman understanding of things for a common day to day person. So, if the father is absent, very strict, or very explosive, let's say there are alcoholic patterns, drinking patterns, which makes his behavior unpredictable, the type of attachment that a girl forms with that person, which in this case is father, is very insecure and highly contextually dependent on a lot of factors, on certain moods, subconscious signs, and things like that. This shapes how she receives love decades later. Let's say whatever is happening between 0 to 10, 0 to 12, or 0 to 15, the type of relationships she would form in 25, 35 is just determined in these specific very precious moments. A sort of trauma is formed in childhood which then just repeats as cycles in adulthood. Now, what this father wound does is it shapes her self worth first. Daughter learns her value through that father's approval, that whether he's giving that approval or not. If she has really heard in her life, I'm proud of you, she feels a lot unworthy. And you see that how parenting is that a lot of parents consider their daughter as burdens because eventually they would be married off to some else home. So not an equal treatment is given, unfortunately, till this day and age to a lot of daughters. Of course, a lot of toxicity also exists. Let's say when certain women are narcissists, they exploit males, but that's a different video. This is just from the context of understanding the psychology and the literature behind certain patterns and behaviors. Anyhow, so if she does not get that fatherly attention, she chases attention as an adult. If the father criticized her a lot, she fears judgment from her partners or her so-called loved ones in the future. This low self-worth leads to a lot of emotional struggles, which then manifests into a lot of unhealthy relationships. And you see patterns across the timeline of when a girl becomes an adult, the type of relationships that she is getting into, there would be a clear pattern. Let's say if you're dating someone and she has a history of, you can say, certain male relationships who were not so good, toxic, and all of that, you'll understand the type of pattern, like why is it happening the way it is. Now, because of this wound, it becomes blueprint of sorts for men, because the father becomes like this template of sorts for all future men. She thinks that just as her father was to her, or how her father treated her, that is how all males would be. And unconsciously, a woman chooses partner who somewhat resembles her father, and the same goes for a boy. A boy chooses woman who somewhat resembles his mother. So if the dad was distant, she expects men to ignore her. If the dad was very explosive, she expects men to hurt her, whether emotionally, and if God forbid there are like certain physical events happening, there's also that fear that that person or partner might hurt her in some weird situations, or if some weird things happen, or let's say a certain ecosystem is created or a certain situation is created. So if the dad was strict, controlling, she fears expressing genuine emotions, what she feels in her heart, and then later she becomes a very underconfident child, always doubting herself with major self-esteem issues. And if dad was weak, not able to protect her daughter from the cruelty of the world in one way or another, she then starts disrespecting weak men unconsciously, because in her childhood she has seen that how society treats weak men in general. Now there are like some certain archetypes or certain set of patterns which you might have seen among fathers. I'll just try to go in a little bit depth. The first is the father who is always absent due to a lot of reasons. Maybe the father was always working, never interacting. Like when she was in school, he was in office, and he only used to come back when she had slept, and this cycle just kept on continuing, whereas there's like never healthy heart to heart bond. It also happens in a lot of families where the onus of providing finances or putting food on the table is predominantly on the father, wherein he is fulfilling the role of a financial provider. But from the psyche of a child, from the psyche of a woman, that person is like a complete stranger, emotionally speaking. There's never any healthy interaction. Then this person, this daughter, grows up craving male attention. In her naivety, she misreads any male interest as love, and this is where a lot of manipulators from a male perspective shine a lot, wherein they just use or exploit the naivety of that daughter in very weird ways to just fulfill the needs of S and all of that. And then she thinks that it's genuine love, but unfortunately, a lot of nuances exist. And then you might have seen that there's this pattern of panicking when men pull away, because her father always did that. The next archetype is the father who always controlled, had a strict and authoritarian vibe about him. How does this translate? In such families, there's always a fear based parenting of sorts, not love based, that if you do this, I'll do this, like horrendous things. If you don't do this is what would happen. There's like a lot of fear mongering that goes on instead of genuine love. And that impacts the psyche of 8, 10, 12-year-old child. There's no freedom to explore emotions, any new experiences. You just should go by the book, by whatever rules we have set. She has never learned any healthy communication. She fears disagreeing with men because she had weird consequences when she did that earlier in her childhood with father and things like that. And due to all of this, she starts repressing all these emotions, due to which you see that there are like two expressions that it is generally manifested in. When she goes out in college, she becomes this complete rebellious sort of person who would just do anything to just stand out in the name of saying that this is who I am from a freedom perspective. Or it would manifest as extreme anxiety for a lot of small things. So there are like two extremes in which certain expressions are just manifested. The next archetype is more prevalent in households where males are unfortunately treated as gods, wherein everyone just idolizes the male figure. It could be due to generational grandparent things, more common in joint families and things like that. Your father is treated like this hero or god sort of person, and daughter just expects or starts expecting perfect men. But in reality, life is very complex and nuanced. No one is perfect. And then when she gets an encounter of real men in the dating world that she goes out, they just disappoint her. No man feels good enough. In her mind, she goes into that pattern of creating unrealistic standards, that this is the standard that this person would meet. In reality, no one can meet so many perfection standards. Standards like earn a shit ton of money and always be available emotionally, not able to compromise or come to a healthy balance of sorts between a lot of priorities. The next archetype is more like a volatile or angry father. This is more predominant in households where like there's a lot of drinking, alcoholic issues and things like that. You see, there's like a lot of tension, a lot of shouting happening in the home, a lot of unpredictability because of obvious reasons. The nervous system in that child's brain says that there are like only two responses: either I should fight with this unpredictable man that is in front of me, or I should just run away in my bedroom, run away somewhere far away from this person so that he cannot hurt me. And it also happens with like there are like a lot of domestic violence cases happening where this angry alcoholic person beats her mother and things like that. She sees that the person that she loves the most, her mother, she's just being beaten upon by this unpredictability of sorts. This also find expressions in very two different ways. Either she starts loathing men, thinking that all men are the same and things like that, or whenever an intimidating man comes in front of her, let's say in corporate spaces wherein she just has to assert herself, she senses that as conflict due to her subconscious wiring, and then it is a danger for her. She wants to either run away or like fight, whatever is expected of the situation. Due to this, she becomes very, very hypersensitive to male emotions. So there's a book, if you want to understand about it deeply. You might have heard about David Goggins. He had written this book, Can't Hurt Me. In that, he mentions that whenever his father used to come, he was very aware about the certain type of moods that his father used to have on that day. So if you want to understand how it is expressed in a male, that is probably a very good reference point to just understand. But females in general have a proclivity to just feel things more deeply. Their emotional side is more active than the logical side. And now my favorite is the weak person, the weak father who is unable to protect that daughter or their family from the cruelties of the world. The people pleaser sort of person. So I've done a video on nice men. Do check it out after this. But in certain situations, you see that the mother is entirely dominant. She's just taking care of everything in the household because the man is unable to exert himself authentically in the world. A father has no authority in the home, and how the daughter perceives it is that this person has no emotional authority in the home as well. This finds expression as when daughter starts disrespecting weak men. Unconsciously, what she does, she starts seeking dominant or controlling partners unconsciously to fulfill that need. And this unhealthy power dynamics are just being repeated again and again through generations on end. Since we are very repressive about our emotions, we don't talk a lot about these issues, but these issues generally impact people. And you see the real life manifestations of these things as to how now it has created just this weird dichotomy in our society and not a very healthy society. And one more archetype wherein men who are unable to control their lust start cheating on their wife. It is translated in the daughter's mind as this disloyal father, unfaithful father. Maybe certain people who cheat a lot, engage in a lot of lies, pathological liars, or have secret behaviors. Let's say if a person has a habit of smoking, he does not do that at home, but he just hides these weird behaviors and sorts of things. I'm just keeping it very neutral, but you can just extrapolate to whatever situations you might have seen among your friends. These things are happening in your homes and things like that. Due to this, the daughter develops major distrust towards men. She expects betrayal from all men, particularly good men, because in her mind, she has seen that these fathers play the good role, that they're the perfect role in front of their wives, but they know that how he is actually as a person. Due to this, these daughters start hating good men, or let's say people who are just walking on that path of somewhat healthy identity formation, has some predictability of sorts. So you see how these things kind of get manifested. But a major problem happens that she struggles with long-term commitment, because long-term commitment requires just values or building relationships on foundations where there is just let's say quote unquote goodness in the long term, positive value creations. Now, how all of this affects her emotional system, let's go in a little bit of neuroscience and a little bit of attachment as to how it is manifested. So firstly, like just to take an example, you all have had that experience of, let's say, drinking coffee when you're asleep. A lot of people have this habit of drinking coffee in the morning so that they just come awake like a jolt. A similar thing is happening due to these toxic patterns and behaviors happening in her home. It affects her nervous system. She cannot stay calm during emotional stress. Small triggers lead to big emotional reactions wherein there's just an identity crisis of sorts. Her brain starts associating men with unpredictability because of certain archetypes which I mentioned. The fight or flight response gets activated, or sometimes the third category also happens. She just completely freezes in that situation due to all of this traumas and childhood patterns and things like that. So how it manifests into the attachment style is either becomes anxious or avoidant. The hot and cold behavior is very common. There's a fear of closeness, fear of distance. She just wants chaos. She just sabotages stability, genuine stability, unconsciously, because her attachment style is like a reflection of the father dynamic that she had in her home. And due to this, love feels unfamiliar or unsafe to her. She just rejects compliment outright, fears depending on a man, believes that love, this so-called love, would not last. It's all a facade, and she just struggles to open up emotionally. Now, how it finds expression in some people is they become hyper independent, claims that I don't need anyone, avoids being vulnerable in front of the world. Or let's say, even if you're dating certain people, they would never show you their vulnerable side. Mistakes dependence, let's say if they're dependent emotionally because of genuine reasons, because every female wants to just drop their masculine guard and feel free with their partner, with their loved ones. But she mistakes that emotional dependence as weakness, and this sort of hyper state wherein you're just always protecting yourself emotionally from all the baggages, traumas, from all the evil men that exist out there. This just leads to loneliness, which creates problem in forming long-term, genuine, healthy relationships. And this chaos sort of becomes a comfort zone. She never seeks genuine stability in life. This chaos becomes her stability of sorts. Just because she's raised around conflict, she just wants conflict all the time, a sort of emotional intensity. Calm men, stoic men feel boring to her. There's not so much passion that those people bring to the table. And she gets attracted to dysfunctional men in general. This sort of turbulence, where there's this constant emotional chaos, feels like passion, because unconsciously she's always recreating those childhood environments. She seeks that environment, which is very weird. But humans are weird, people are weird, and this trauma, whatever that father has done, becomes an attraction of sort. Now, from an Indian culture, Indian fathers are just treated as providers. They're not genuinely treated as nurturers. This emotional distance of sort is seen as normal. Work is always greater than family because we are still heavily a survival based country. There's like a lot of poverty in general. This sort of worshipping the duty is always seen greater than affection. Man just cannot lie, let's say, genuinely with his children. He's always needs to rush and do duties and things like that. And outside, social respect is valued more than the genuine connection that a person has in their relationships with their children. No genuine connection is just valued. All of this just creates emotionally starved people in our country, and you see how it's being impacted right now, the impacts of it. I've also seen Indian families just suppress a lot of female emotions that don't overreact, adjust. They want to train her societally so that they can get respect. It happens for boys as well, but you see the scripts, it's very common. You might have also heard, a lot of daughters have heard that don't argue with your father. Your father knows what's right for household. She learns to hide her emotions, genuine emotions, and because she's unable to express her emotions healthily, she grows up confused. Males find different expressions of it. Due to all of this, a weird dynamic also happens that the mother daughter become very close, and then they start bitching about the father, about how bad it is, and they become emotionally codependent, wherein their gossip becomes a laughing matter. You might have seen that men are treated as these fun objects by this duo. Because that father is distant, mother eventually becomes everything for that daughter for good reasons or bad reasons. And then what this does is that she learns that this chaos, whatever chaos is within, is the utmost thing. There cannot be any stability that can ever come in my life. She starts seeing as the father mother dynamic as dysfunctional because the mother is constantly talking bad about that father to her child, repeats those patterns in datings, and does not know how to handle genuine masculine energy, which brings a sort of stability and calmness in life. And I've also seen that it's weird in our society that we are very comfortable in watching sexual, let's say, messages on the screen. But whenever there's like a genuine affection that is needed within our family, let's say normal hugging or cheek kisses with your children, be it your daughters or your sons, it's just overly sexualized. Sometimes, let's say, if a father and daughter, a daughter is a teenager or a little more above that age, if she's walking in a park with holding her dad's hand, it's just seen as inappropriate, and emotional affection becomes a taboo of sorts. This creates a sort of hunger in the daughter, and then she starts seeking that affection from the outside world. She interprets any male affection that she's getting very intensely, and this is where narcissists shine. And a major problem for all of that is because we don't like studying. We haven't educated ourselves on a lot of levels. Since I'm talking more from an emotional perspective in this video, there's no education in our country. Nobody teaches girls proper boundaries, how to genuinely trust in a right way. How should one develop self-worth honestly, and how can one communicate the emotional needs? She's just learned three emotions. One is excessive fear or guilt, that if you do this, this has happened, this is bad. Or she is just dominated very heavily. And then she enters adulthood with all these emotions, chaos, and things like that. Now, what's the long term impact? Of course, one is choosing the wrong partners, subconsciously attracted to men like her father, avoids stable men, chooses men consciously to recreate that trauma which I mentioned, just repeating those unhealthy patterns. Generationally, this trauma just carries forward, struggles to find genuine security emotionally and otherwise. She self sabotages herself a lot because a lot of women love chaos. They destroy any good relationships that might have come. Likes creating conflict when things are calm because something within her feels off, feels undeserving of healthy love, and thinks if she's getting close, or she just has that fear of being abandoned by that person. Her fear controls her choices, which is very unfortunate for our society because there's just not any healthy relationships that have been formed. So she has difficulty respecting men. Whatever her father was, she would just go in the opposite behaviors. Let's say if her father was weak, she would like to dominate men. If the father was strict, she then starts fearing men. If that father was absent, she would just start demanding a lot. If her father was volatile, she would become a lot defensive around men, very hypersensitive to emotions, a lot of respect issues, genuinely respecting the man that you love. A lot of these issues would just start creeping up because she cannot respect any men. She sees men as these parasites of sort in her mind. All of this either leads to extreme emotional dependence or extreme avoidance, either too clingy or too distant. Just playing in the extremes because of trauma, cannot maintain a balanced sort of vision, a balanced emotional healthy bond with people around her, or more specifically with her partners. Struggles with healthy attachments, and those intense bouts of gifts and things like that. She confuses that all with love. So you see that how common this culture of giving gift is in our common cinema and things like that, because these are just coming from archetypes that a woman should just be kept happy all the time and things like that, which is just baloney. Because if you start reading things, understanding things, and start observing patterns, all of this would then just make sense. And towards the end, what this does is creates a lot of confusion as to who she is as a person. She does not know who she truly is, becomes a people pleaser of sorts, wherein she would just do anything to get that male validation. Unconsciously, she sees the mirror of her father's projection in her lover. She would just do anything to please that person and mirrors partner's personality by repressing her own true feelings and emotions about that specific relation. All of this just leads to an emptiness and loneliness, and then ruined marriages, cases, and whatnot. Due to this, a lot of cheating also happens because she then starts finding her self worth externally. So please understand that daddy issues, or which is more common, but the real term for it is father wounds, don't make a woman bad. Every one of us is a human, and all of us are hurt in one way or another. All of us are trying to just heal through our work. It's just about understanding these wounds is how you build empathy as a person and cultivate a sort of depth in your character. And it also helps you to just protect your own well-being, your own long-term decisions that you would want to take with certain women and things like that. Anyhow, let me know what you feel about this video. It's a pretty long video, but I felt the need for making it so that we can just develop empathy towards certain individuals. And if you're married, unfortunately, or are in a relationship, why certain things are happening, these patterns just help you understand those. So anyhow, write your learnings in the comment section. Whatever learnings you have had and whatever weaknesses you have broken in your life, do write that as well. I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, stay awesome. This is Debu Pindra from Debu Ki Dastak signing off. Cheers. Bye.